So they're just blatantly flirting and getting off with each other in front of the little prince and the black guy, which it's a small raft, and I assume they were travelling for a day or two, so it must have been pretty annoying.
What he did, tremendous black, was like, I want some of that overpowered Beastmaster.
Or turn to the prince.
Yeah. Oh. I've never seen Beastmaster before. I'd heard of it, but I always got it confused with He-Man for some reason, so I went into this a bit unknown. I was like, let me give this a chance.
Financially, it didn't do great, but it actually ended up doing really well on telly. If a film did well on TV, it didn't matter, say in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, but 80s was the first time when a film could be deemed a success and get a sequel if it did well enough on TV afterwards, or VHS obviously. The film was never not on HBO apparently, to the point where sometimes people used to joke that HBO stood for Hey Beastmaster's on. The French financiers had a feeling that it was going to be a massive hit on TV and actually demanded that it be shot with the right ratio for television, because obviously nowadays we have flat screens and it all works for the anamorphic kind of big widescreen. But back then, tellies weren't made like that. They were already into production, filming with the anamorphic widescreen, and they made them dump it and start over with an aspect ratio that would work for television. So it's directed by Don Coscarelli, most well known for the Phantasm series, which I fucking love. Firstly, an inspiring story because he kind of made it on the back of no budget. Actors would be on set and just have to leave because they actually got a paid gig. It was kind of like Bad Taste with Peter Jackson, where it was a true passion project just made in your spare time. And it ended up becoming a successful horror film and then an entire successful horror franchise. He's such an interesting director, like he makes such unusual films and he's got a real unusual style, but this feels like probably his most Hollywood-ish straightforward film. And right from the get-go, it's got a weird vibe to it. Like, you know, you see these witches around the cauldron, they're sexy from behind, but then you see their mugs and they're fucking horrible looking. I got a real Sam Raimi Evil Dead sort of vibe to a lot of the creatures in the film. And I liked as well that, you know, it's a fantasy film. The world's populated with monsters, but they're all quite unique. Like they really kind of made their own mythology in the film. You know, witches are just like troll looking women. They're like fucked up looking. You know, you have these unusual bat creatures that show up later in the film, but there's not that much magic going on. You know, there's sorcery and stuff, but it feels a bit like Lord of the Rings, where not everyone's casting a spell or not everyone's a monster. It's quite grounded in a lot of ways.
As you said, not everyone's like a supernatural being. There's like a lot of poverty, and you know, they're going, Beastmaster's going through the towns, they're going through the towns, and you see like the real, you know, struggle that the villagers are having. So I did like that element to it, because I like a disconnect where you have the supernatural beings, but you also have like normal people. And
I wish there was more grounded fantasy. Like, there's a lot of fantasy films from back in the day. You'd think with The Lord of the Rings that would have rebooted the genre, but it really didn't. There's been basically none since then. I know they made the Hobbit films, which stunk. They've made the Lord of the Rings series, which was abysmal. I watched one episode and I was like, I can't even hate watch this. It was horrendous. It's just, I just can't work out why there's not more fantasy films.
The Green Knight was pretty good. That was very, very
I'll
good.
check it out.
Yeah.
So getting into this film, right from the get-go, we're introduced to our big villain, who's called Maax. Bit of a shit name, so I'm just going to call him the Wizard. So the Wizard, he's hanging out with some bald Hare Krishna-looking geezers, and he's doing some spells, doing some dodgy shit. The king shows up, and he's not having it. He's like, you shouldn't be doing this witchcraft and this, that, and the other, whatever. He don't like it, so he's like, get the fuck out.
You are banished for life. In Arak, no one will remember your name. Go practice your heathen religion in the outlands with the barbarian Johns.
Weirdly, what did you make of his little Hare Krishna ball geezers killing themselves?
I guess they were like sacrificing themselves to fulfill something or the other, but it was a bit difficult to work out. What was your it didn't really explain it. Like,
yeah, I don't know. I got the feeling, was it like a show of power of I snap my fingers and they do, like, it was nearly like it was like his magical way of giving him the finger.
Yeah, that would make sense. Like, the king turns up and he's like, look how strong I am, and just clicks his fingers, people commit suicide. That is imagine if you could do that in real life. Something happens to you and you're like, bang, they're dead.
The thing is though, no matter how moral you are, you'd eventually use it, and then there'd be a point where you'd get trigger happy with it and not really care anymore. So it reminds me a bit of Excalibur. It's a big fantasy film, but the opening is before the main character's even been born, and we're following the parent. So basically the wizard gets thrown out and the king's going back to hang out with his wife, and they're sleeping that night and they wake up to the witch basically performing like a magical abortion, or maybe a magical cesarean is the better way, or not even that. It's like a magical transference, because she takes the fetus, or the nearly fully grown baby, out of the mother and transfers it into a cow, and then takes the cow away, in the process killing the mother. She scarpers off into the woods. She cuts the baby out of the cow's womb and is about to sacrifice it over the fire when some geezer shows up and he's like, what the fuck's that chick doing? Walks up to her, realizes she's about to kill a baby and gets in the way, starts fighting her. She's like doing somersaults and dancing around him. I really like the effect where he plunges the sword in and she's just chilling, and then the cloak falls down without her in it and she's disappeared.
Yeah, kind of like the Wicked Witch of the West when they throw water on her. It's like that. I think in this fight scene, he falls into like a fire, and it was just so funny. Some of the set pieces, you know, the practical effects did make me laugh in this.
The special effects I actually thought were pretty damn good. The choreography and things at times, there's no justification for how shite it was. Like there's things, you know, like when you see a 50s film and they didn't even get that, it's a lot easier to sell a fight scene if you do a lot of cuts. They would just stay in one static shot of like, and you can see the guy waiting to catch the punch, and it just looks awful. Like it was the 80s, and Don Coscarelli's a great director, so I was just like, there's no excuse for the choreography to be that bad. But a lot of the special effects were good. But anyway, he ends up saving the baby and taking it off to his village, which gave me real Rohirrim, the capital of the Rohan vibes. And he raises them as his own. Gets a bit older. I love the scene where basically we first introduce to the idea that he can control animals, and it's the way the bear just strolls out like Yogi Bear and all, like standing totally upright.
It made me laugh so much, because this is what, kind of going back to what I said about special effects was the incorrect word. It's the way the scenes are set up which made me chuckle. It's like all of a sudden the bush starts like shaking, and then some guy gets dragged in, and then a bear just walks out and just goes like this, like the whole time. He's just standing there. The father's like, "Get back, run!" like all shouting, and then all of a sudden, well, you work out that he can communicate with beasts. Hence, he's the Beastmaster.
Yeah, he does sort of like, he stares at it and then you hear a wow wow sort of sound effect and the bear just fucks off. But what cracked me up is the way it walks out. It feels like it's a guy in a bear suit, but it's clearly a real bear. Now, to cut him a bit of slack for why this is shot so awkwardly, apparently this was the first scene they were filming on the first day of shooting, and as soon as they released the bear, it freaked out, started attacking the handler, and ran off. So that is, whatever happened after that, I don't know, and how the shooting went, but that is the footage they were able to salvage out of it. So knowing that, it's actually pretty impressive. And like, considering, because there is a lot of problems with shooting with the animals, which is always going to be, the eagle pretty much never fly in command. You very rarely see it leaving the ground, and the reason is because all the aerial shots they got of it, they actually had to take it up and release it from an air balloon, because it was just refusing to fly on command. Over 30 ferrets were used to film all the scenes. Apparently you can't really train them. It's more a case of just you leave some food over here and hope they run in the direction you want them to do. And considering they play thieves in the film and they did, quite a lot of stuff, like they were quite integral to the plot in a lot of moments. The tiger's a fucking tiger. Apparently, one of the easiest to train and get to do tricks of all the big cats.
Wasn't it a panther?
No. It is a tiger that they painted black. In fact, 4 tigers were used. Basically, Don Coscarelli originally wanted leopards, and the animal trainers were like, nah, there's a reason you never see leopards doing stuff in movies. It's because you can't train them. They're really skittish. It'll be terrible. Yeah. Tigers is the way to go. But he was like, no, I want a black, it's supposed to be a big black. I don't want striped tigers. He had the vision in his mind. And he was like, oh, why don't we dye them? So they would go through a couple of cases of women's hair dye a day, dyeing these tigers. Can't imagine how they did it. I'm picturing some drugs might have been used to get him into a more agreeable state. But if you look now at times, I knew this going in. So I spotted a lot of times when the tiger must have been drinking water in between takes. Or, there's a couple of scenes where it drinks water in the film on camera. And you can literally see the dye starting to come off around its mouth. There's rumours that some of them died from the dyeing, but I couldn't find any real hard evidence. It was kind of just rumours here and there.
If it was a tiger just undyed, I don't think that would have the right effect. So I think Don Coscarelli was right. I do think the panthers, black with the yellow eyes, are cool as fuck.
Well, it's great because it creates an otherworldly sort of thing, because the way it moves is clearly a real animal, and it's in the 80s, so it's obviously not CGI. It's clearly a real animal, and your mind says, oh, it's a puma because of it's a big black cat. But the shape of it and the look of it, in your mind, I know that's not an animal that actually exists that looks like that, because it's the shape and gait and size of a tiger, but completely black, and it felt like something out of He-Man or something. It didn't feel like a real animal.
I have to call into question the skill of the animal trainers, because I'm going back to when we was in secondary school. Remember when we had that guy that would turn up with a literal hawk?
Oh, Hawkman.
Yeah, Hawkman. He had the hawk and it would literally fly and kill the pigeons, innit? Because they used to just shit on the roof. I've seen it in shows and stuff. They literally can command it. So I'm I wonder why they chose that specific trainer for the eagle, because he doesn't sound very good.
Well, to be fair, maybe it wasn't, but also I'm sure nowadays it's more of a refined art, but back then, the bear, like I said, that caused problems in the first day of shooting, that was the only bear in Hollywood, in the whole of Hollywood, that was working at the time. And it's a niche job. Maybe now we just live in an era where there's more, and there's films have bigger budgets nowadays. We're used to living in an era where films have millions and millions and millions to spend, but back then, I don't know what the budget of this film was, but it probably wasn't giant. But at the end of the day, it comes down to that you are still working with a wild animal. You can't actually domesticate a tiger. You can't actually domesticate an eagle. You can't even train ferrets. The tiger was better trained than the ferret, supposedly. So you just make the best of it that you can. And it's pretty damn good. There's a lot of shots of tigers hanging out with people. The only stipulation, I think, was that the young prince who comes in later in the film, there was a rule the parents refused to allow him to ever be on set at the same time as the tiger. So whenever you do see them, he's actually a midget.
Wise.
Fucking definitely wise.
I was going to say, ferrets are bastards. Obviously, you remember, in year 9, I went to, Cable Manor.
No, go on.
They sent all the,
the high achievers.
yeah. Let's call it for the audience, the brains of the school to Cable Manor, while everyone else looked to universities. They had loads and loads of animals. They had ferrets in it. You could walk around on a little leash, and I'm telling you, they're fucking bastards. They used to bite you. They're fucking bite pains. Their teeth are really long. They're actually rodents, aren't they?
Yeah. I used to know a girl who had ferrets as pets, and she used to rave about them and love them. I remember her telling me actually that they bite. Well, you sound like a pussy, because she was like, they bite on you but not hard, and it's their way of actually showing affection.
Yeah, but they loved her probably. These ones fucking hated me. They probably saw me lunging towards.
I'm sure if they don't like you, they also just bite
Yeah.
harder. It's
Yeah.
not like they're going to pull out a gun and shoot you. Like, we see him growing up and we see him finally come of age. And I started getting proper Luke Skywalker on Tatooine sort of vibes. You know, he's got special powers and he's got a destiny, but he doesn't know it yet. And he's been adopted and he's growing up in this kind of desolate, it even sort of looked like Tatooine. You know, we spend the whole time essentially in the desert.
Back to the Luke Skywalker point, he's also got the same haircut.
Yeah, he
You know,
does
that
actually.
blonde 80s haircut. To be fair, for peasants, I don't know how he got all his food to get that ripped, but
He was
that's
shredded.
yeah, that's another story for another time.
And it's not long before we see trouble brewing, because we see over the hills all these geezers showing up in sort of black suits of armor. Interesting design on the bad guy's armor. Sometimes it looks like pretty generic body armor. Other times they appear to be wearing some sort of gimp mask. Did you notice that?
Yeah, I assume that would be like the higher rankings, but I don't really know. Or maybe
The DOMs.
maybe the lower rankings. Yeah,
The soldiers come in and I'm not even sure what they want, because they just kill everybody. They fuck up everybody. Like, I don't really get what the point was. Like, surely you'd come in, kill a bunch of the men, get everyone in line, and then start enslaving people. And luckily, his trusty dog saves Beastmaster, despite having an arrow embedded in him. Yeah, he drags him away, and then Beastmaster wakes up. Doesn't just find his entire family / town / everyone he's ever known has been killed, but even his dog's dead.
that was sad, man.
Yeah.
There should be warnings, man, like before the film starts, like a dog dies in this. That's why I've never watched John Wick.
Really?
I
Yeah.
know
You've never
what-
seen the first one, yeah.
No, I know what happens in it, and I'm like, I know that what he
Yeah.
does, and he gets revenge, but I just can't face.
You know, you can watch the sequels though. They don't kill a dog every film.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Do you think every film starts
yeah,
with a dog
yeah,
dying?
yeah. That's why he keeps going on rampages. I just assumed he got a replacement dog and they keep doing it again and again. But yeah, no, I found that actually quite sad, man. It was a cool little dog. Saved his life.
Yeah, so after he's woken up in the village, after the massacre, kind of just wakes up with eagle vision, and you realise he's sort of channeling an eagle that's nearby. There's no real reason why he's now deciding to tap into his animal powers, but I guess his adopted dad did tell him, hide your powers, because he's worried people will think he's a freak. But now, you know, everyone's dead, so he's like, fuck it. So he starts seeing the vision of this eagle, and he calls the eagle over, and this is his first little animal that he collects in the film. So Beastmaster goes and hangs out in the desert for a while, and he's just sort of like, you know, milling about. He's sad, his town's been destroyed, his dog's dead, his dad's dead, everyone he's ever known is dead, and he wants revenge, naturally. But he ends up falling into some quicksand.
Hey! What? Oh!
Quicksand must be one of the single movie tropes that is actually quite accurate. Like, the way people get knocked out in movies, even to this day and age, is just not realistic at all. But quicksand is real. Like, have you ever seen someone actually stuck in quicksand, or an animal stuck?
No, I think I saw like a gazelle or something trapped in it. And like it's in every single like basically like adventure film, like Indiana Jones, like don't move, don't struggle. If there was no one to pull you out, you'd be fucked.
I'm pretty sure it's true that the more you struggle, you quickly sink.
Oh, really?
Because you're basically, if you think about it, you're essentially digging yourself. You're creating space for you to fall into. That's horrible. But luckily, there's a couple of ferrets nearby.
Yeah.
He's able to drag himself out, but then one of the ferrets falls in, so he saves him.
Every time the ferrets appeared, it's made me laugh. Like, I don't know why, they're just such like jokes creatures. Compared to the bear scene, which I found very amusing, I thought this was pretty well done.
So after he's saved the ferrets and become mates with them, he starts having visions of an animal getting hunted, and we realise it's a tiger. It feels a bit like a video game because they all have really defined roles. You know, the eagle is what he sets off to either send messages or go spy on people. The ferrets are essentially like his little thieves. You know, if he ever needs to pick anything up, he sends them off. And the tiger is obviously muscle.
This is quite a good point of debate. Like, if you had put yourself in Beastmaster's shoes, like, what animals would you collect? I was gonna go great white shark, but that would be too obvious. Like, maybe a whale would be.
I don't think that's obvious. I never thought you were going to say that.
Obviously, if you had great white shark, if you could just get any of them into the water, you just call that bang, it's game over kind of thing.
What about the rest of the time when you're not in water?
Ferrets, I'd probably strike off. Do you know what I would pick in place of a ferret? Rats. Rats are really intelligent.
Rats is a great
They're
one.
smaller, and they can go about.
Well, also, we live in London. So, like, you got about 1 million of them.
And do you know what I'd pick? Like a swarm of like hornets or something like that. Bang, can kill them. Like, do you know what I mean? So
I would pick foxes and I'd just fucking drive people mental. Like, I just have them always knocking their bins over. And
making that weird, like,
yeah, and I'd have a flock of birds.
birds is.
Like, if I didn't like someone, I'd have a flock of birds just make really annoying noises outside their window constantly.
Or, we've already covered a film about the power of ants if they go rogue.
Just send them out looking for sugar.
Yeah, basically. I think Beastmaster does pick a good selection, really, if he's going to, like, war.
So now he's got his whole crew assembled. And you think, obviously, he's out for revenge. You know, he's got the bird that can go see really far and spy. He's got the ferrets that will steal keys if he needs to get in somewhere. He's got the tiger who will fuck anyone up. Then what's he gonna do? First things first, he goes spies on a bunch of chicks naked swimming.
I would do that.
Fucking yeah, man.
I mean, he's done a lot of work to get the crew back together. You might as well do a
definitely.
little fun for a bit, you know?
Well, he's not looking for it. He just stumbles across it by accident.
Oh,
But I just love the fact that his immediate first response is he sends the ferrets down to steal their clothes. So they're like wandering around naked. Then he uses the tiger to like run out and scare this hot redhead chick. And she's freaking out. And he runs in. He's basically doing the make me look good thing.
Yeah.
Pretend to scare the tiger off and then starts getting with her.
You've just got to show them who's in command. You owe me your life, but I'll accept this as payment.
Who are you?
It's kind of like, you see in like those classic films, you pretend to be a mugger and then I'll run in and like beat you up and to impress the girl.
Well, it's basically the fantasy you have when you're like a teenager. You're sitting on the toilet taking a shit and you just picture yourself being the hero and like getting
But the exchanges between him and fit redheaded girl, they were cringy, some of them. When the young king's there and then he's like, will you help us, Beastmaster? And he's like, don't know, I'm busy. Ask your cousin. And then she comes over and like kisses on the cheek and he's like, diary cleared or something. But yeah, it was just, it was decent chemistry.
It cracked me up how Me Too it was, like how much people would be living. Like you could just imagine a blogger rewatching it today and getting all pissed off.
100%, man.
But she slaps him and she's like, fuck off, stay out of it. And we learn that she's a slave to the very people that wiped out his town. So he's obviously like, sweet, okay, now I've picked up a clue on the trail of how to find these people. And she's kind of just not interested in him. She fobs him off. She's like, I'm not interested. And he's just hooked on her to the point where a lot of his motives and decisions aren't even related to revenge. It's more about he just kind of wants to follow this chick around for the rest of the movie.
What I don't understand is like when he meets, she's just in like the woods by herself.
He's having a swim.
And it's like, your slave masters aren't very good.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually.
Literally, they just release you to like swim about.
Yeah.
And it's like, hang on, why don't you just run off? Like,
Run away. I'll protect you.
You don't understand. I must go back. If I don't, my family will be put to death.
So he's knocking about and he comes across this cave and there's like these prisoners in there and he's going to release them, but then he discovers these weird bat people. would you call them?
Yeah, I'd call that Batman.
And they're all standing there kind of freaking him out. They're looking at him a bit like, what the fuck are you doing here? Because it is their house, to be fair. He releases one of the prisoners who then just runs straight into their path. They seem to be half human, half bat hybrids that then digest you inside their wings.
Yeah.
Is that the best way I could describe him? Again, a pretty unique, interesting creature.
They're bats, but about 6 foot tall, with a human head.
And no mouth.
And no mouth, yeah. It's very strange, very strange.
But yeah, cool design, I liked it. You're assuming they're going to try and do the same thing to Beastmaster. They all kind of back off and let him go. So we're a bit like, oh, what was all that about? And what's this emblem? Anyway, so we leave there. We get our first look at the city, which I really like this design. It had a feel of a bit of Minas Tirith in the desert and a bit of the Mayan Aztec style pyramids. It was obviously melded together from different cultures in real life and real history, but it had, you know, it was quite distinct. Like I'd never seen those particular designs and building styles thrown together. So he goes into the city and the first thing he sees is the wizard sacrificing a little kid and dashing him straight into a big fire on top of the pyramid.
Yeah, when Beastmaster came in, he's gonna save the kid, and then as soon as he like chucked him down, I was fucking hell. Like it's a bit shocking, really.
Yeah, it's fucked up, man. All the locals who have been enslaved are like freaking out and sad. The wizard's up the top just being like, we need to sacrifice more kids to the gods. Which is interesting because he's part real deal, part charlatan. Because he's obviously really be able to do magic. You know, he's got his crew of bald geezers who are his little magical slaves, I guess, do all his bidding. And he's capable of real magic. But he's also a bit of a charlatan, and he's you know, selling them snake oil. He's keeps saying we need more kids to sacrifice. But I don't think he believes that. He's well aware that sacrificing children isn't going to do shit. I guess he's divide and conquering, you know, have them filled with fear. Yeah. Take away their children, because he clearly doesn't believe it. He decides to sacrifice another kid, a little girl, once she's thrown in and just before she falls into the fire. Beastmaster has his eagle pluck her up and save her. And you see the wizard for a second, he's got a look on his face like, what the fuck? And then he's sort of just, I'm just going to roll with it and says,
See? I have spoken, he wants your children.
So he clearly is bullshitting.
This made me laugh because it's kind of like, you know, that Austin Powers thing where it's like, we'll lower him into a tank of sharks with laser beams on their head, and they're like, why don't you just fucking shoot him straight up? It's like, why is the fire down like this hole of ramp? Like, why don't you just drop it into a thing? But yeah, it was pretty cool that the eagles say that. I guess, like, let's think about it. Do you think an eagle could pick up something of that size?
Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely. It just cuts to their parents still worried, and all of a sudden, like, Beastmaster steps into shot and goes, "Ha! I have something for you." And then, like, the little kid just runs in and, like, reunite him, and it was just a funny scene again, man.
Yeah, and the dad rewards him with a big exposition dump.
His son disappeared. The Juns put their demon high priest, Maax, in power, along with the fiendish witch women. Now he breeds us for the blood of our children.
What about the girl?
Yeah, so the bald wizard followers set upon Beastman, and, well, how can I describe him? A tremendous black man shows up to aid Beastmaster, and between them, they kind of like overpower and take out the bald followers. Beastman's got his tiger, and it cuts to a tremendous black man, like taking out like 3-4. He's got no powers. His power is being a tremendous, strong black man. That is which is pretty cool. Subsequently, the only like tremendous black man in the film.
Yeah, is it? Where did he come? Where was his tremendous black parent?
It's like, how many tigers do you think's worth a tremendous black man? I think it's pretty close, man.
Yeah,
like 10 tremendous black men. But anyway, they take out loads, and then, you know, Beastmaster's like, oh, thank you.
There's safety in numbers. Perhaps we should travel together.
3 years since we fled Arak, we have been everywhere, trying to raise an army.
They're making friends around the fire late that night. The prince is kind of eyeing up Beastmaster, like, how are you controlling all these animals? Like, what's that about? And he's just sort of like, you know, giving his story where he came from. And he's making friends with him and he's showing him things that his ferret's stolen. And he gives him anything he wants to keep. So he keeps a ring. But we find out this ring came off one of those little bald geezers, the wizard's little minions. And it's got an eyeball on it. So for most of the film now, the wizard has a direct line of sight to spy on every movement they're making.
It's so stupid, man, because like obviously the ferret steals stuff. We're not going to debate whether that's stupid or not. But it's surely like when the ferrets like give you the haul, you like pick the stuff up and look at it. Like surely someone at any point, or even when the prince takes the ring, would have seen, hang on, this has got an open eye on it. This is a bit strange.
One thing I'll give them is the fact that the eyeball's not open all the time. It opens its eye to look around, sneak a glance, but it's open enough where you'd be like, someone should notice, like, hey, there's an eyeball.
Maybe when
on
you
your
look
finger.
at it, like...
So we learned that the king is being held prisoner inside the pyramid, and we also discover that Kiri is the cousin to the prince. Kiri's been captured and she's going to be sacrificed, so tremendous black man, Beastmaster and the little prince bitch heads off to rescue her.
It's so funny because, like, going back to it, if Beastmaster does not give a shit about the king, but as soon as he hears, like, fit redhead girl's been trapped, he's like, we need to
That's
save-"
my thing, yeah, because they're kind of
he
like,
wants to, like...
they're like, will you help us?
Yeah, yeah.
And he's like, nah, fuck, I'm looking for this chick.
Yeah, he wants to basically fuck her.
Yeah.
So, like, he's like, alright, we'll go, like...
And I actually kind of like that about the film, because it made it less predictable. You know where usually he's the stoic guy who's, I'm saving the day, and she's like, but Beastmaster, and he's like, not now, I need to go rescue it. It's the complete opposite. He's like a bit of this, like, he's just a real dude who's just, you know, he's following his dick, and his dick's leading him, looking after his chick, and he kind of nearly just by accident saves the day as a byproduct.
Yeah, it's like, it's funny in all these fantasy films, like, to shag a chick, you have to, like, kill dragons.
Yeah, you had to be a murderer to kill a bunch of people.
Thank God for fucking Bumble, man.
I know, she's just fucking sitting there looking hot, doing nothing. They save her, they're escaping on a raft. The worst action set piece of the film, I'd say, because they're sort of, like, drifting off slowly. They're literally, like, 4 feet away from the shore at points. You could probably wade into the water and bring the raft back or attack them.
Yeah.
And they're just inexplicably not able to shoot their bow and arrows.
It's kind of like stormtroopers. They're so bad at it. It's like, well, we'll just wait here then.
Exactly like that, yeah. It was really dumb. They escape and they're sailing downriver on the raft, and they had some good little exchanges of dialogue between Kiri and Beastmaster. They're just blatantly flirting and getting off with each other in front of the little prince and the black guy, which... It's a small raft, and I assume they were travelling for a day or two, so it must have been pretty annoying.
I think he's gonna help us.
I have a feeling he might.
You will come with us?
You're gonna have a hard time getting rid of me.
What would you do if Tremendous Black was like, I want some of that overpowered Beastmaster?
Or turn to the prince.
Yeah. Oh.
It was like,
yeah. Oh,
I'm not protecting you for nothing.
Yeah.
We shall welcome them.
So they link up with the dad whose kid they saved. He's a good character as well, because he's a massive pussy, but he's one of those people that he's just aware that he's a pussy.
And he's even like, oh, please, you know I'm a coward. So, you're right, Declan, I like that. At the end of the day, if you turn around to me and was like, you got to go and fight a wizard and shit like that, I'd be like, I don't really want to do it. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
It felt like they were kind of crawling around the pyramid version of vents at points, because there was all these passages that they were crawling through above the rooms they were looking into and spying on, and it was a bit like, why was that built? What is that? Maybe it makes sense. Maybe it would be like ventilation for the pyramid, because I suppose you need to have the air circulating somehow. They spy on a couple of the bald Hare Krishna priest geezers, seemingly making a super soldier by strapping him into a gimp mask and performing some sort of spell that turns him into like a mindless fighting machine.
Yeah, it's kind of like Saruman with the Urukai, isn't it? Like, and the prince seemingly knows the process.
And it goes berserk and starts killing the priest because he sends the ferrets in to steal something.
Yes.
So that mindless monster gets out and starts just running around the pyramid causing havoc. Meanwhile, the tiger's knocking about looking for the big villain, killing left and right, and everyone's kind of scattered doing their own thing at this point, which I quite liked as well.
I like it when they split up, man. It's like, we'll take out this section, you take out
You'd
this.
never do it in real life, but
No.
every film has to have it.
It's like you know in Scooby-Doo, it's like, oh, we'll split up and I'll take Daphne, and then Shaggy's like, oh, I want Daphne.
Yeah.
You keep giving me fucking...
You go with the dog.
Yeah, you keep giving me the retarded dog. I want Daphne for once.
So Beastmaster finds the king and they discover his eyes have been taken out. So they put a rag around his head. Wizard shows up with one of his witches and you see Beastmaster get into a little fight with her and he's doing, you know, he's swinging his sword about, but it's like completely missing her and she's teleporting and zipping about. Eventually he manages to get her and the tiger shows up and starts chasing the wizard around the pyramid.
The tiger and the wizard, yeah. I feel like the wizard should have a spell that would easily kill the tiger, like some sort of lightning, but I guess it's called Beastmaster and not wizard.
He can't just chuck out like laser beam spells on a whim. He could probably like affect the weather if he spent 2 hours on a spell.
Yeah.
He's essentially a dictator as opposed to, or a massive cult leader. Like a lot of his tactics are use fear, divide and conquer. He's not using magic to control everyone, is he?
So it'd be a bit like Merlin's kind of role in Excalibur, more like counselling and being an all-round like general slimy guy.
They all managed to escape. Tremendous Black Man's wandered off into the desert to collect all their people and get an army together, and they all meet up around a campfire, and the king's a cunt.
He is a dickhead.
What an ungrateful prick.
He starts like all of a sudden, even though they've saved him, bullying Beastmaster.
He is a freak. The freak who speaks to animals.
But father,
I need no coward by my side!
Yeah.
And then Beastmaster like runs away and like genuinely starts crying.
Do you think he got a little bit jealous? Because he's obviously the king and the leader, but Beastmaster had sort of taken on the position of essentially the leader and the king.
Yeah, well, if I was Beastmaster, I would be like, well, I can control animals and I can see, so...
You're an old blind
Yeah,
guy.
so fuck you.
And I just saved you. Like,
and I'm going to shag your fucking niece.
Yeah, you cunt.
Yeah.
So anyway, so Beastmaster literally wanders off crying.
Yeah,
Like,
it literally like zooms into his eyes and there's like tears coming down it. And
the king, literally blind, leads them into battle against the wizard and his troops.
Blind leading the blind.
So after Beastmaster leaves, Tremendous Black Man finally clocks the eyeball ring. He destroys it, but they already know. He literally just heard the king saying his plan. Now, despite that, the king is still like, no, we're going to go anyway. So I hate this king character now. He's a fucking idiot.
Tremendous Black Man is literally like, no, I've just stabbed an eyeball ring. That you've heard every single thing you've said and seen it. He's like, no, we fight.
Yeah,
Right.
and you're blind. And
Yeah.
like, Beastmaster, he wasn't saying like, oh, let's forget about him, let's wander off. He was like, we have to be smart here. And so I do think it was an ego thing. The king was just like being a dick.
If I was Beastmaster, I wouldn't bother coming back because I'm like, I've just saved you and you've just cussed me and called me a freak. Like, why should I help you? But good heart from Beastmaster, to be fair.
After Beastmaster's left as well, the king starts talking about his first son that was killed as a baby and his first missus. So we obviously instantly realise, firstly, he is Beastmaster's dad. But also, for a second I was like, wait, so is this a Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia thing where he's been getting off with his cousin?
That as well, yeah.
But then he talks about his first wife died, and so it's obviously a different wife, therefore a different blood. So he'd be sort of related to her just through marriage.
Still a bit weird.
Not really, it's not through marriage.
All
Who
right,
cares?
fair enough. Yeah.
Also, like back then, I'm pretty sure they'd fuck anything as long as it wasn't your direct sibling. So I don't think they'd give a shit anyway.
I think they used to do that.
I think they
sometimes.
Some cultures still do on purpose.
Oh yeah,
marry up with your cousin. So Beastmaster's back to square one. You know, he's knocking about in the desert, hanging out with his ferret mates and his tiger and all that. When the cowardly dad shows back up.
Only hope. We need your help. The attempt failed. Maax lives. What happened to Kiri? She was captured, as was Zed and Seth and the boy. They're to be sacrificed at sunset.
Why do you think we didn't see it battle? Do you reckon they just run out of money and they were like, fuck it, we can't?
Could have been budget, but also, I mean, storyline-wise, it makes more sense because it's just like we know that battle's gonna fail. Like in terms of
blind,
the pacing of the script, even I felt like it did make more sense to just skip over that battle and have us not see it.
So Beastmaster triumphantly returns to save the day. He's a guy of good heart, even though he's been cast, even though he's been trampled on by blind scumbag king. He comes back. I think to save Kiri more than anything. So they're on top of a temple. Wizard has got the king with a knife. But it's like a Mexican standoff, but with swords. Like going back and forwards. For some reason, in the middle, there's a gap. So he keeps jumping back and forwards. And Wizard slits the king's throat, which I was a bit surprised about. I thought somehow the king would survive. But then I did think if the king survived, then he would have just taken over if Wizard was defeated. Then a kind of like battle ensues. It's not the most spectacular battle. Again, choreography is called into question a little bit. They're kind of just like spinning around. Beastmaster it's a very weak death actually. He just stabs the wizard just drops to the floor. I thought the wizard would like explode or something cool, but that's it. The king is...
Or it's the ferret that actually finishes them off. Ferret finishes off the wizard, which I was quite surprised because we have another big final showdown with the army that shows up, but the wizard's already gone. So I was kind of surprised, like your main arch sort of villain in the film's gone. So again, pretty good at subverting your usual expectations and cliches of like the beat and pacing of the plot of these sort of films.
Yeah, I thought it'd be like a kind of Lord of the Rings circumstance where he still has an army, but Frodo throws the ring in and therefore Sauron's dead and the whole army just run off. But I did like that twist, you're right.
One thing that really cracked me up as well is all the people are surrounded, they defeated the wizard and they know the army's coming tomorrow or tonight and they're like, what do we do? And Beastmaster delivers his line, we will fight.
Yeah.
And then he's holding the ferret. He sort of uses the ferret like a napkin and clearly like wipes his mouth.
That was weird.
Did you notice that as well?
I did notice it.
Yeah, it was really weird, isn't it?
I don't understand it.
Like, what?
I don't know, just get a tissue or a leaf. I don't know.
It was just odd, like, and they left it in. So we get down to the final big battle. Kind of like, again, Excalibur. Cleverly film it at night. Because it's a great way of hiding the limitations of, say, only having so many extras or only having so many sets. So they're in the temple gates and they've filled a moat with tar, ready to set it alight as the guys are showing up. So the prince and Kiri get stuck outside. Beastmaster needs to jump over to save them. And we have a nice little fight scene where they're fighting off some of the troops. There's the biggest badass in the army. What did you think of him and Beastmaster's fight scene?
It was better. It was an improvement on what we've seen previously, the choreography. But again, I wasn't too blown away. Maybe I've seen other films, but like... You know, watching any fantasy now, Declan, I just automatically compare it to Lord of the Rings. I will say it was better than previous efforts of it.
I thought it was better. Still not great. It was a lot better. Up until the end, where he kind of does a WWE style, slightly guides him into a fire.
Yeah.
And he just like goes with him, goes straight into the fire, and then just immediately is dead. There's no even like rolling around on the floor.
Yeah.
He just kind of like disappears.
Doesn't even burn, he just dies.
So anyway, so they're getting their ass kicked. It's the classic, they know they're going to lose the battle because they're so outnumbered and outgunned. Old Beastmaster gives the little eagle emblem from before to his eagle and sends him off. And then again, quite similar to Lord of the Rings, where the
Yeah.
eagles show up
Yeah.
at the end of the final film. We have those weird bat people show up and save the day. They start fucking up everyone. He looks at Beastmaster at the end. They share a glance with each other. It's nearly like if he
Kinda like
if he
nodded.
had thumbs, he would have given him a thumbs up.
But is it like, you know, in the third film before the Battle of Minas Tirith, there's like an oath where they get the army of the dead and they have to help. Is it something like that?
It felt like that. I don't know. I don't know. It was
But
really,
yeah,
because they're
fuck.
clearly like they're very much not animals.
We'll never know.
He doesn't have that moment where he's like doing mind telepathic
Yeah.
signals sending to him. I don't know. And they felt very like intelligent. So the next day, the prince has been hurt. He's resting all night, but you know, it's a bit touch and go for a minute, but he ends up being fine and he's going to survive. And the moment Beastmaster can see that he's going to recover, he decides to leave. But Tremendous Black Man stops him and he's basically put it together. He's the real heir to the throne.
I like this as an ending scene. Tremendous Black Man and Beastmaster have a kind of heart to heart where Tremendous Black Man's like, no, you should be king. You're the rightful heir. And then, no, you've raised him and trained him all your life. He has the right hand to be king, and then just rides off into the sun.
Double guns into
Yeah,
the
yeah,
camera,
yeah.
and then
like,
heads
just
off.
Literally like CSI, like sunglasses on, heads off.
But Kiri tracks him down before he can leave and they start swapping spit and it all ends and everyone's happy and everything's great. And even though one of the ferrets died, sadly, we see a couple of baby ferrets in the bag with the ferret. So obviously, I didn't even put it together that they were a girl and boy. They fucked, yeah. Seemingly, that's how babies are made.
Everyone's fucking. Final thoughts on this one. First time seeing it, well worth the watch. Would I watch it again, Declan? Not in a rush, if I'm honest with you.
I mean, I don't know if I'll watch this particular one again, but I'm definitely going to check out the sequels. Definitely will eventually watch this again at some point. And definitely will check out the TV series, assuming it's not a cartoon series. I loved it. I love fantasy films. I love fantasy films from this era. And I love Don Coscarelli's movies. And for me, the worst thing, we talked about this with action films, or any time in a film there's like a big final showdown, those sort of films can feel so predictable to the point where once you've reached a certain point in the plot, you're nearly just waiting for it to end because you know how it's going to go. And even though, you know, they did defeat the big villain and the hero did win, a lot of this film subverted the usual plot beats enough where I kind of didn't feel like I knew where it was going. And it had a tone that was very different. You know, it had humor. It was quite, for this kind of film, it was actually quite ahead of its time in terms of being grounded in the ways you want it to be grounded, but then having levity in the areas where you want it to have levity as well. You know, just the fact that the hero wasn't your usual hero. He was kind of just a Jack the Lad, you know? Once he discovered he had the power to control animals, one of the first things he did was steal some chick's bikini so he could see him naked and then use his tiger to try and impress her, to try and shag her. And then that was his main motivation for the whole film. He pretty much saved the day just by a byproduct of trying to get laid. So, yeah, I just enjoyed the film. I really liked it. The special effects were hokey enough to find charming, but good enough to not make fantasy elements completely fall flat. The animal training, despite the fact that it had a lot of problems on set seemingly, for me, for the most part, really does its job well. You're never, ever, ever going to see a tiger dyed entirely black in film again. You know, animal rights didn't exist back in the 80s seemingly. So for that alone, it's just a pretty unique oddball film and well worth a watch.